What's up, everybody? This is Elliott Terrell with artofmagic.com, and you're listening to Magical Thinking. Thanks so much for enjoying the show, you guys. I really appreciate all the feedback. If you have some, you can email me at podcast@artofmagic.com. The guest for this episode is Jared Kopf. He's one of my all-time favorite magicians. I know I say that about everybody, but he really is. He's a dear friend. He's an incredible, amazing performer. Every time I watch him do a set at the castle, or I see him at a convention or a lecture of some sort, it's just really powerful, moving magic. And I just love him so much. In this episode, we talk about his mentor, Bob White, a whole lot, and how important Bob was to shaping the magician that Jared is, and actually just the person that Jared is. There's also a lot of talk about Erdnase. Jared got a law degree and is amazing at quoting books, and so there's a lot of direct quotes from Erdnase, which is a lot of fun. There's also some old school inside baseball stuff regarding some of the Vernon disciples, if you will. But anyway, this is a great episode. It's a little shorter than usual. Jared had a performance at the Magic Castle that he had to go get ready for, but I'm so appreciative, and he's just the best. Also, don't forget to like us on Facebook, facebook.com/magicalthinkingpodcast. We have our own Facebook page now where you can stay up to date. Make sure to choose get notifications and all that jazz. You can also like us on Facebook with @asenseofmystery, and on Instagram @asenseofmystery, @treasure of wonder. On Twitter, you know the deal. Just get in touch, join the newsletter. I want to hear from you. Send me a message. Let's chit-chat. Anyway, the esteemed, amazing Reverend Jared Kopf, Esquire, warrior, shaman, wizard. Enjoy.
Dude, his cards up the sleeve is fun.
Oh,
I think I'm gonna have to play with that.
yeah, lots of his stuff is so cool.
You know, that's how Ricky Smith and I kind of became friends.
Really?
It was over drawing room deceptions and Ernest Eric, but mostly drawing room deceptions.
It's so great.
We were both reading that book. It came out. We were the only kids we knew that could do any of the stuff in it. You do Triumph, yeah. You do the second phase, yeah. Good. You got ambidextrous interchange. You don't have a jacket either. You can't show me right now. I can't show you either. All right, cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How long have you and Ricky known each other?
I mean, what year did that book come out? A couple of years before that, we knew each other, and then the year that book came out, that was a TAOM, so 98, 99, is that when that came out? So how long is that? 16 years? Jesus, we're all gonna be dead so soon. Oh my God.
That's crazy. How old are you guys at the time? I'm just trying to get the time.
I don't know, we're both at 14, 15, 16, something like that. We were kids. And Dan and Dave were at that convention, standing over by the escalators, making visual art, all the way back then too. Like, They were, people were like, who the hell are these kids? Yeah. Those were good years. And I didn't know it at the time, I was just having fun.
Yeah.
And everybody must be like this. But I didn't know that, and probably only because all these people are still around that I remember those times now. But those were good years.
That's great.
To us, like Lee and Aaron Fisher and R. Paul Wilson and Cranzo, like those cats were the big kids to us.
Yeah.
And then everybody else was the master that you really couldn't, I knew Bob.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary. I mean, I was the luckiest of the crew, and then, Ricky was just interested in the exact same things I was interested in, and there were other young magicians that were interested in magic, but he was interested in that niche of like neo-modernism, right? I never met another guy like him at the time.
Yeah. Because he was in Houston, right? And where were you?
I think he was. I don't know if he was working for H&R at that time. He was too young to be.
Yeah.
I mean, he was going from convention to convention.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to. Yeah, because
How were you? Were you born and raised in Texas?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so you've been there forever. I'm just trying to figure out when.
Yeah, this is the mid to the late 90s.
Yeah.
Was when...
Did you guys see each other much? I'm just curious.
No, but we would see each other at conventions,
Yeah.
and it would be like, we'd always be reading the same thing,
Yeah.
or interested in the same stuff. I mean, I could talk to him about Vernon and Skinner, not so much Brother John Hammond, but all the classic, like Arthur Buckley. Who else are you going to jam with Arthur Buckley on in 1997? You know, no one else knew who I was talking about.
Yeah.
He did, and a few other guys, you know, of the local crew. Of the local crew, there was Mike Williams and Brian O'Neill, and Bob was the sun, and everyone else was the planets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the boys at Magic Land, what was Douglas Magic Land, and then when I was there, Howard Hale and Mark Roberts owned the shop. So that was, I mean, pretty much all the 90s. I went from whippersnapper to tween to teen to magic obsessed adult with that magic shop.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course TOMs and SAMs and IBMs. I didn't go to many conventions, but I went to the TAOM
Mm-hmm.
pretty much wherever it was. I went to the combined IBM SAM, and then by that time I'd gotten old enough to go wherever I wanted.
Yeah.
On my own.
Mm-hmm.
But from the age of like 12 to, which I think back now, I mean, you see 12-year-olds at conventions now all the time. Like,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
are you from? Oh, I'm from Philadelphia. Where are your parents? Oh, they stuck a note on me and said, please take care of him, right? You know what I mean? Like, they wind up at these conventions. They got cell phones, and they're like, I'll just call Uber.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, good for you, buddy. Right?
Making your way.
Yeah, you're making your way. But back then, you could. I'm surprised they let us do that.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of knew, like, we just had a hotel full of babysitters who would just talk to us and help, you know what I mean? I guess that's what our parents must have been thinking.
Whatever, it doesn't matter where he is, just get him out of the house. I don't
Yeah.
care. I don't want to see another cartoon.
That's right. I didn't really do, I mean, my brother saw his fair share of card tricks, but I love it when my parents come to see me do magic.
Yeah.
Because they have like, you know how some people say, oh, our families, they know that we're really not doing da-da-da-da-da. For the questions my parents asked me, they're under the impression that I learned some really cool stuff in college. You know, they don't know that, like, I think that's pretty cool. I didn't hit them with a lot of magic tricks, but they were very supportive. They let me go to the shop, let me skip a lot of school.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah.
How old were you when you got into it, and how did that kind
Magic?
of happen? Yeah.
It's kind of a cliched story. I saw magic when I remember seeing a card trick by my grandfather, which now could be a false memory, but I think it was the circus card trick, or something like it, a key card. And I was like maybe 4 or 5. And at that point, I loved cards, and he had a lot of different decks of cards. I also remember that. He had Tally-Ho, and I didn't know the names at the time, but I loved looking at all of my grandfather's cards. And they lived in New York, so he had all the East Coast weird cards that I never saw in Texas.
Yeah.
Though they probably existed somewhere in Texas, they weren't popular there. So the East Coast, there were a lot of Tally-Ho cards in New York. And in Texas, I only saw bikes and bees. And so he showed me a trick, and then I really loved my grandfather. He was a cool guy. And then I saw, of all things, a dad who had gone to the magic shop, which shop I don't know, had said you've heard it. Obvious. I mean, if anyone's ever worked in a magic shop, you've heard some dad comes in and says, hey, I got a birthday party with a bunch of kids. I need some tricks that I can learn. Give me 10 of them. And then they drop $500. They learn none of them.
Yep.
They might learn 1 or 2. They take the whole thing and shove it in a closet or throw it in the garbage when it's over. Right? Magic dad. And he bought the Chinese linking rings. And in my memory, he learned a routine. In reality, he did not. Right? Sure. Whatever it is he did, to my 6-year-old brain or 5-year-old brain, however, I mean, I was young.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew my grandfather did a cool trick,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't feel like magic or anything. This did.
Mm-hmm.
And it had, it was a prop and, of the things that appeal to you when you're a child. And I wanted it. I just wouldn't shut up until someone would take me to the library and then we found Magic Land. How we did that, I have no idea before the internet. I don't know. I don't even know how you go about, like, my father must have looked up Magic Shop in the Yellow Pages or something, or told someone to look it up for him. But one day we wound up going to Magic Land. I was like, this is Mecca. This is where,
This is where the magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it was.
No, seriously, yeah, I can imagine.
And I just got lucky. I stumbled upon the place where Bob White and many a great magician before him, where they just held court and shot the breeze. And so that's how, I just got started in that same old way and just haven't looked back from that. And the same magic that got me into it is exactly what appeals to me now. I haven't really changed much in my taste.
I think that's pretty fair for a lot of people. As far as, like the stuff that you get into at the early stages is kind of what...
Yeah.
You do the same tricks, you just add nuance and what you've learned to them.
I couldn't agree more.
The people that are really into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How did you get close with Bob? Because
he wouldn't talk to me.
Yeah,
he wouldn't talk to me at first. But I was also really young.
Yeah.
And he was already old.
Yeah.
So he had nothing to talk to me about as far as he was concerned. He was probably right too. So I would hear every once in a while, he's like, don't show anything to him. He's But I was pretty obsessed with Vernon already. One of his students, Jason Walmick, worked at the magic store at the time. And he did Triumph, and he told me, he says, I wanted to buy it. Mm-hmm. I had like $10. I was going to buy a trick. And I said, well, where can I buy that? And I was looking in the case, looking for the deck of cards that did it. And he's like, no, it's in the Vernon book up there. You got to go over the books.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lot of magic books. From gifts, because by that point, all my relatives knew I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I had practical mental effects by Animan, or it's just a bunch of stuff from the Jinx re-edited, how that works. But I got it from my uncle when I was in the 4th grade,
You were given a tome of magic secrets.
You're not kidding. When I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, what year was this? Got 30. That was the other thing, like, magic made me a nostalgist and all this stuff. I like, realistically, you don't want to go back before the time of penicillin.
Yeah.
That's out of the question, or indoor plumbing or something, right? But I the old books and stuff, I like that feature of it too, right? And the fact that they're secret and that we have a secret library and all that stuff. But with Bob, I think he was upset that I had found Vernon already in a little way, because my dad bought the Vernon Book of Magic. I begged him to buy it. And
So
this
you
is
could learn
before it
Triumph.
was reprinted, right? And Triumph's not in that book.
No, it's in
I said,
Stars of
will you
Magic."
get me the Vernon book? I need this Vernon book that the guy showed me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know Jason from Adam at that time. He just worked at the shop. And I didn't know it was polite to learn the people that you frequently see, learn their names. And he bought the book. And it's like a first edition
Wow.
Vernon Book of Magic. And it was unsolicited. I said, I really want this book. Maybe for my birthday I could get it. And I think it was, $100 or something.
Wow.
And I had no concept of how much that money was. Or I knew it was 10 tricks that I could have gotten. And I was ready. I was like, any 10.
Yeah.
I'll trade any 10 for that trick.
Yeah.
And when I got the book, I was sad that it wasn't in there. But then I read the Vernon Touch, that essay. That was the first serious essay, if you can call it. It is a good essay.
Yeah.
That I had read that kind of shook me. And it was, it's about the professor.
How old are you at this time, reading this essay?
Dude.
14?
No. Like 4th or 5th grade.
Oh my
11
God.
or 12, 13, I don't know.
Jeez.
Yeah. I
You
just
were
wanted that
steeping
trick.
in it, man.
I didn't understand a lot of it. You
Yeah.
know, I learned the Han Ping Chen trick. When I showed what I was doing to Bob, he was like, "Oh, you know. Oh God, no." You know what I mean? Like, I was wrong.
Yeah.
But I knew. Just read the Vernon Touch. Read that essay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you read that, you know that this is very special, and that they begged him to make this, and that if it weren't for his, you know, whoever it was that convinced Vernon to ever pose for a photo or write down some notes or send them a letter explaining how it worked. Like, we're lucky we have any Vernon material, any, let alone footage of him. But because the man never penned a book. I mean, he wrote the little pamphlet Secrets, and he annotated Erdnase, which begins with, "This is the book I've always wanted to write." And I was like, dude, that ain't a book, Vernon. You're annotating another book.
You made notes.
Yeah. But they're priceless.
Oh, of course.
In any of its guises, those revelations or revelation, if you want to. But I was already into Vernon, but I didn't know anything about him. There were no other products that I could find that were about him, and I wasn't. I didn't know anything about magic. You can't know much. I had my magic drawer building, and I had my small collection of books. I'll tell you the books that I had. I had a Tannen's catalog from 1983 with Copperfield and his helmet hair and his shirt open to like the 9th button on the cover.
Something very important
posing with a rose.
For a young man of your...
Well, it had card manipulations 1 and 2 or something, or one of either both of those or one of those reprinted in the back.
That's cool.
And so I learned Silas and the Slickers. I think it's volume 2, the Hugard book.
Yeah.
And so that I didn't know what a double lift was. I learned the double lift from that trick, which just says do the double lift, and it just occurred to me like the only thing that could mean is you turn them over, right? And then after I got the Vernon book, the Vernon double lift was in there, so I learned that one. And so essentially what happened was I found out about Erdnase through having read through this catalog and the trick descriptions and going to the books and finding the Vernon Book of Magic. And then when you found that, you found Vernon's tribute to Nate Leipzig and Malini, and like all those prices were from 1983, from like 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know I could. I thought and 10 years earlier to me was a lifetime. So I was like, well, surely the store doesn't even exist anymore. You know what I mean? I didn't even have and one time I tried to call Tannen's from that catalog number, but they'd moved who knows how many, a couple times since that time that catalog was printed. So I had that. I had the Vernon Book of Magic. I mean, I had a really limited library filled with like really good stuff. And knew nothing else. I had the Encyclopedia of Card Tricks, Scarny on cards. I liked cards a lot early on. I had a couple books from the library that didn't get returned. At my first TAOM, I got Greater Magic because Mephistopheles is on the cover, and I just thought it was awesome. I'm literally lucky. It's all luck. You know what I mean? And then when I opened it, and I always would go into like the Encyclopedia of Card Tricks or what have you, and get Vernon's genius confirmed for me. I would go to see if his tricks were in this guy's book. And if they were, I'd be like, the Vernon Touch wasn't fooling. He is, like, this guy's stuff is ubiquitous. And then I got Expert Card Trick. Then I realized that there was an awesome Dover series. You know how this stuff happens. It happens to everyone who gets into the academics of magic. And,
The academics of magic. I've never even... That so perfectly and succinctly sums up what it is that people like us do.
Yeah.
A lifetime of study. That's amazing.
We're academics, and guys like Magic Christian and Kalush and Ricky Jay, they're real scholars. Like that Hofzinser book, that's the stuff of PhDs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In any other discipline,
Yeah.
that would be a staggering work of biography.
Yeah.
You know, so there we have a scholarship. Of course, we have. You know, Conjuring Arts
Yeah,
Research Center.
I've thought about it in that way. I just love that phrase.
Yeah, I think would be a nice little attitude shift for the magic community. You know, it would be like, I just think it would encourage people to tap into that side of it, or admit that they already do that and embrace it. You know, we don't really have a Hogwarts to go to.
Yeah.
But what would those novels be without that mise en scène, you know? They're in school.
Yeah.
We don't really have that. But my friend, in Dallas, I have a friend, Ian Richards. He's a geologist, you know. He works at SMU. He's a professor and a lecturer and a research scientist. And he and his wife, Maria, who are just wonderful, live a few blocks from me, and he's a very good magician, very funny, witty and dry, and really interesting guy. And I think, I'm not putting words in his mouth, but a colleague of his asked him, you know, having studied magic and geology and so, like, how would you rate them as far as academic disciplines? And he'd say, oh, I know people who have PhDs in magic that do not, but there's no real degree.
There's no certificate.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're academics on par with scientists and historians and critics and things.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's a lot of them. Not many, but more than I think most people would realize. Like Caveney. That guy's Dr. Caveney, man.
That guy's the president of the university.
Yeah, Dr. J.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool.
That would be cool.
If Ricky J went by Dr. J.
Dr. J.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Like, you know, Hofzinser, he didn't have a doctorate from what I can tell. He just called himself doctor. That's why, you know, I thought I would have a business card printed that said, I mean, it's too pretentious, but it's funny. I think it's funny to have a business card that says the Amazing Reverend Jared Kopf, Esquire. Right?
I think you've told me that.
Wizard, priest,
Shaman.
lawyer. That's my bit. Like, here you go, sir. What is the Amazing Reverend Jared Kopf, Esquire? I love it.
Please have it made. I want one.
I know. I'm into making business. Oh, dude, I'm into making business cards right now for my friends, as like, you know, gifts and stuff. Especially because, you know, you can get business cards printed so cheaply these days, and they usually come back looking kind of cheap. But I use them in tricks and things, and then you save like the really, you know, like the card you handed me. It's like, here's $1, sir. Yeah. I really respect you enough to just be giving you $1 right now, because that's how much this card cost. But like, if you're going to be doing graphology or you can just tell like this is wasted words, you can hand out the kind of the cheapo card.
Yeah.
You know? But you want it to look nice too. And I was using cards in the castle, and I ran out of them, so I had to go to the index cards, which is nice. But I've heard people say you shouldn't write on your own business card or fold it. It should be valuable and so on. And I have a card it looks pretty valuable. It isn't, and I'm more on the idea. It's like, what are you talking about? I don't care.
This is just a physical object. It means nothing to me.
No, it means nothing to me.
Yeah.
I do not value this.
Yeah.
I value what it represents and what I'm about to do with it.
Yeah.
And guess what? I have another one, and you can have it.
Yep.
You know, but that's neither here nor there. No, see how I told you, dude. I go on tangents, man.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. So back to Bob White.
I was gonna say we'll eventually get back to it.
Yeah. So eventually, I found my way to Erdnase, and the inner secrets of card magic. I wanted to learn. I loved the movie Maverick, and I wanted to learn how to deal off the bottom of the deck better than Richard Donner. So I found Erdnase. Who knows how you find Erdnase? Probably through the Vernon stuff or connecting in who knows?
Yeah.
It just happened. And I started, really diving into it. In that book, everyone knows it makes 50-year-old minds melt a little bit,
Yeah.
But I also do not think that it reads like mechanical instructions or like...
it's very poetic.
Yeah, I think people are, even in the technical descriptions, I think he's lucid, concise, clear, sparing of words, although the grammar is Victorian. It is a well-written book. I don't care, even if people say, well, he betrays his, his lack of education here, and I was like, you know what? I don't know. It's not just because it's Victorian sounding.
Mm-hmm.
You come up with a sentence like, we buck the tiger voluntarily and censure no one for the inevitable results. This is a good phrasing,
Yeah.
I mean, a little highfalutin, but it's Erdnase.
Reverend Esquire Jared Kopf.
Yeah. So I learned the bottom deal out of that book to a degree that I knew I hit a roadblock. It's not looking any better. Been doing this for months.
Yeah.
I did the same thing with the Zero Shuffle and the push through.
And you just got to a point where...
I was just like, I could do it. I did it in tricks, fooled my friends.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew it wasn't right. I didn't use the bottom deal in tricks, really. And then but Bob saw me doing it. And instead of, he'd say, what are you doing there? Come over here. And I'd show him things. And then he'd say, mm-hmm. And then I'd show him again, and he'd see it. Finally, he pulled me aside one day. He says, look, I'm going to show you something that Charlie Miller showed to me, and as far as I know, that's it, right? So keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
But I'm going to change. You've taken this as far as you can take it. He was watching to see where the cold letter, the black, and the text of Erdnase stopped. And where my young mind couldn't read between the lines or interpret certain terms for what they really do mean. And when he did show me, I found out how exacting Erdnase's language is. And in like 10 minutes, he changed a few of the bottom deal, he changed. Now, I didn't have it right away, but in 10 minutes, I knew what to do. Mm-hmm. And so from that point forward, I just worked on it, and now, I don't know. I mean, 15, 16, 17, 18 years, I don't know. I mean, I just don't really think back that far, but that long. By that time, you better have a good-looking deal.
Yeah.
And in that time, I've come to learn that I take more of a Steve Forte approach. That Bob had his curriculum, and it was the Vernon curriculum, and the Miller curriculum, and the Bob White version of those curricula, all laid out. I told him one day, I was like 14, I said, I sure would like to learn cards up the sleeve. And he says, yeah, I bet you would. You know what I mean? Like, he would just shut me down. He's like, you can't learn that trick. You're not ready. So yeah, he was great. And
do you appreciate that? Or is that like...
Oh, I wouldn't trade it. His style of teaching, and that very few, I feel sad that only a few people will ever, because he was a very good teacher. He could get it across, but he was, might as well have had a ruler to whack your knuckles. But it was all out of love, and he wanted the magic to be good. He wouldn't have been talking to me if he didn't think that I had the potential to do it well.
Yeah.
He saw I was capable, and he recognized, like some people can't, that the only reason Vernon and Miller talked to him was because they saw he was capable.
Yeah.
And willing. You have to have both of those things. Those are necessary, they're necessary and insufficient conditions to becoming good at anything. Mm-hmm. It's hard for me to really pinpoint what it is about magic that I even find appealing. It's not fooling people. I don't really care about that. A trick should fool.
Yeah.
obviously, but I don't know what it is. I think it's even more the academic side that I enjoy. That's my hobby, is studying magic.
Mm-hmm.
And my job is performing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really weird. And I try not to separate the two, but you just have to. That's all there is. I study magic that I'll never perform for anyone.
Sure.
But it's good for academic purposes,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Bob got me rolling on that. And he taught me how to identify good magic. He taught me about the Vernon style of magic and the Charlie Miller style and that hybrid of it. Do
you want to explain what those are just a little bit?
Yeah, it's this conversational, natural. It sounds so cliched. You hear it time and time again, and you'd have to really dive into it. But what I can say is that Vernon I can summarize Bob's philosophy with a quote from Erdnase. And I'll preface it by saying that Charlie Miller gave Vernon a copy of Erdnase that he had notes in or something, and he wrote some nice thing in the front. And then at the end of the little inscription, he said, "The true secrets to magic are within the pages of this little book." Charlie Miller. And then many years later, I asked Bob to sign my copy of Erdnase in like 1996 or 7 when he did his first seminar.
Mm-hmm.
I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything. He wouldn't talk to me then. And he wrote the true secrets to it. I was like, oh, this is so dope.
That's so cool.
Right? And even then, especially after we started talking about it, Miller did not tell him that the secrets to gambling or cheating or card tricks are in there. He said to magic. And so Bob thought about that for the better part of 40, 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And his conclusion is that you take the Vernon cup and ball routine. Bob traced every phase, every action of that routine to the literature. Right? This part comes from Hoffman, and it's modified.
Mm-hmm.
This part comes from Sachs. This part comes from... And he could see where Vernon got all the bits.
Mm-hmm.
Or Pop Krieger was doing that, or Malini was loading from the pockets. And it's just that, that's what Vernon was good at, was taking all of these good ideas, recognizing what was great, and putting them together into something new, and modern. He's a modernist.
Mm-hmm.
He's with Joyce, and Flann O'Brien. All the stuff that happened in the early part of the 20th century with architecture and the rise of film
mm-hmm.
as an art form. That era, I find to be I love that. Just the era is wonderful, and it's the wellspring of very just beautiful art that also gives birth to an era I really like as a postmodern one.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the modernists, you see how it goes. So Vernon was a modernist, and he could take what the classicists were doing, and make it accessible and real. Seem real because he was using ordinary objects. He didn't have a bunch of apparatus, right? This is the beginning of magic as we know it.
Yeah.
And there were others. There are precursors, just like, Duchamp is a precursor. His cubism or proto-cubism, whatever you want to call it,
mm-hmm.
Predates Picasso and others, right? But
yeah.
Ask the average person who Picasso is, they'll say he's a painter or an artist or whatever they'll say. And you ask them the name of any other cubist, and they're like, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. Tell them what cubism is, I don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how it is. That's just the way it goes, Vernon was an innovator because he recognized what all the people he admired, why they were good. They may not have known, and I don't know if Vernon was very good at articulating what was so great about them, but he knew it intuitively because he was just a genius, a real one. I think he could have taken any medium and been great at it. Silhouette artists know him, and they don't know that he's a magician.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh, he was great. Yeah, he was a great 20th century silhouettist. Da, 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 da. Like, you do know he was the founder of modern magic, basically. And they're like, oh, really? Oh, I just knew he cut a piece of paper. You know? I think he could have done anything he wanted. He could have been a good piano player or anything. So he took this line in Erdnase, which is, you know, I'm paraphrasing. Bob would be pissed at me right now if I couldn't quote it, right? But essentially he says, your effect should be clothed with chicanery or plausible sophistry that apparently explains the procedure, but in reality explains the contrary of what takes place. I think Vernon latched onto that statement, or that statement just got absorbed into his entire psyche. Mm-hmm. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to name a trick where Vernon does not apparently explain what he is doing.
And that's the way that's done.
Right. Or, you know, everyone knows that this ring here must have a hole, but it's very difficult to find. See if you can find it. And when he says that line, he's pointing at the ring with the hole in it. You know? If there's a ball under this cup, I must use an extra one. And now the audience is like, yeah, that's right.
Makes sense.
Right, makes sense. Yep, I knew that. It's a little bigger than the others. Bang! Oh! Right? And then it comes, I mean, try to think of it. There are very rare exceptions where Vernon doesn't tell you the method and then
show you
that that's wrong. Mm-hmm. And that is the birth of Tamariz.
Yep.
I mean, it's just and it's that conversational mode. So apparently you're talking to these people with the people that are participating or viewing, but all of their responses are implied. They don't participate. If they're hecklers, they might reply to you, but the average polite person doesn't. But it's like it is as if it is a conversation. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how effective that is necessarily for theater, because now you're getting into a phase of like, man, if that's the case, that's permanent fourth wall breaking, and magic kind of can't, you know, Houdini in a dime show. So like, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a man of 10,000 tricks, and I will show you blah, 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 blah. You know, you only have so much time to, you know, you're going to do trick, and get the dimes, you know, your tips.
Yeah.
And not for Vernon. Vernon didn't care about that. He didn't give two shits about money, apparently. Right?
That's what we hear, yeah.
No, he's just an artist. And that was the medium that chose him. And so, you get the best ring routine ever. The structure of it it's stunning. I mean, if you could break down the Symphony of the Rings, to call it a symphony is no joke. It's masterful. I've tried to replace it. I've tried to eliminate rings. 6 is the right number, and you might take out a couple of the falling ring phases, which I do, but that's only for time. Mm-hmm. Every time I cut them out, a little part of me feels terrible, because they're beautiful. They're just really good, but that's a routine that could be done exactly the same way to music, and I don't ever do it to music, because Vernon said you have to hand out the rings. The trick is meaningless unless they feel they've examined every ring. And his version, the impression is that every ring was in someone else's hands. Maybe not at the same time, but look, I mean, that's what I mean. His way of thinking is so intuitive. It was intuitive to him. It must have been. We don't have very many notes. He would keep notes, try to read his notes. They wouldn't make sense anymore. Remember you said, like, Al Baker and I, or no, Dr. Daly and I had a star system, and I looked at my notes, and it says, card reverse, third from the top, 5 stars. And he's like, I don't know what the hell that trick is. That's from 1936, you know, I don't remember it. All of that stuff lost forever, you know. It's really difficult to pin why is Picasso important? Is it just because he represented motion in a single frame, right? Or the sides of three-dimensional objects in a two-dimensional plane? Mm-hmm. Is that it? I'm not sure that's it. I'm pretty sure that's not it, right?
Yep.
But his art stands on its own. His personality as an artist does.
Yeah.
Right? It's weird.
Yeah.
Vernon's like that. Vernon's like Picasso. And I think you know a Picasso or a Vernon when you see one.
An artist is someone who lives outside their art, through their art. In my mind, like someone who's truly great and a master. Not only are they known for that, but it's like it's who they are. inextricable from their person.
Yeah. The best artists I think are like that, where you can't remove them at all.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you have a soul, whatever the hell that means, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you have human decency and you walk through the post-impressionist wing or the impressionist wing,
Yeah.
be prepared to be shaken.
Yes.
Especially when you get to the Van Goghs and just, you're like, this guy struggled to sell his work, thought he was a failure,
Yep.
thought nobody loved him.
Yeah.
Did you see that Doctor Who episode?
Oh my God, I cry so hard every time.
I mean, I'll watch it over and over and just cry like a little baby.
Yeah, me too.
It's the nicest thing ever. Just thinking about it's getting me misty.
I know, me too.
I know. He's like, oh, to me, he was the master of color. You know, and just when he starts, what do you think? What do you think his importance as an artist is? Oh, he may have been one of the most important men to ever live.
It's just
so nice.
Yeah.
I don't. They become inextricably linked to what they do, and I think Vernon gets a little deified and stuff around magicians. But of all the people that sat at Vernon's elbow, and many people did and can claim to have done so, in my most humble of opinions, I think that Bob got the most out of Vernon, or how do I put it? He emulated Vernon's thinking to such a degree that it feels Vernon-esque in a way that other Vernon students, their stuff, again, this is where it gets nitpicky and it's hard to explain. And it's not just a bias because, because Bob is my teacher and I love him like a father.
Yeah.
But I would tell you, I think, if I said, yeah, he was good. Bob was great. Very good. Nah. He really got the most from him. Because, look, I knew Roger Klaus. He was really good. He was Bob's best friend, for a time, at any rate. And that's a long story. But I knew all those guys. And I never met Skinner. Could have, but I wouldn't have known who I was meeting. But I know John Thompson, and I'm lucky to know some of the right hand. Steve Freeman, right?
Yeah.
What a badass.
Yeah.
Right? And he got quite a bit from Vernon. The touch and the style of handling, and his sleight of hand is impeccable. But Bob, man, I don't know how to explain it, but he kind of is Vernon-y. You know what I mean? Like, he kind of... If he had a higher pitched voice and was shorter, he just kind of might have become him,
Just slowly morphed.
But he's not. He's from Texas, and he's tall, and he doesn't take shit from anyone, right? And he's kind, when he's in his character and he's a continental gentleman, he's very kind, but he's a cantankerous old guy, just like Vernon was. They're very, very similar, and their magic is very similar. I think if Vernon, I know this may be blasphemous, but I think if Vernon could have seen Bob do the cups and balls when Bob was about 55 years old, I think it might have brought tears to his eyes to see him do that routine. Because there was nobody else that learned the Vernon routine. And I'm not just saying the phases.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the absorption of the way of handling and looking, and when a cup is picked up and how gently it is placed down and the angle at which things are tipped and but all the little bits and pieces. I think Vernon would have just looked at it and been charmed that someone had learned that piece so beautifully. I mean, I think Bob might, anyway, I'm not going to blaspheme too much on here. But yeah, God, I mean, as I say, I'm just lucky. And if it weren't for Bob, I wouldn't know all the wonderful people that I know, really.
Yeah.
Just luck. And yeah, you got to put in, the effort, and you have to, but people get real. I already liked it. I was already all in.
Yeah.
So once that's done, can you keep rewarding yourself for your own tenacity? That's just weird, So, yeah, Bob White is no question, is the only reason that I'm anything remotely of an accomplished magician of any kind. Or I should say, I might have become a pretty good magician, but I wouldn't trade the magician I've become. I wouldn't trade his tutelage for anything, because even though I don't really do, I could do Bob's club act.
Yeah.
The cards up the sleeve, the silk to the egg, the whole thing. And man, I've done it. I bring out my P&L table and my derby and I set it down, but that just isn't really me. Mm-hmm. And you got to start. I think that's very good to do, is to start and just admit that you need to imitate. Guitarists do it, singers do it. Just get real. Just admit it.
Yep.
That you have to be duplicative, and your act is gonna be derivative.
You don't know what to evolve into until you know
No.
what you could be or have done.
No. Yeah, I'm not. I read some liner notes. I think they were John Mayer liner notes, and John Mayer's the kind of cat that just pisses you off. There's no doubt though that he has great skill. I saw him at the guitar festival in the 2001 or 2, and I was like, man, that kid can play the guitar, man. And they're in one of the liner notes. He says, "Yeah, Eric Clapton is well aware that I play his licks.
Yeah,
I mean, he's cool with it."
Yeah.
And whoever he was calling out, saying, "You steal from Eric Clapton," he's like, I had breakfast with him. He knows that I do that.
Yeah.
That's why we're friends.
Yeah.
Because he did that to Muddy Water. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So, like, with magic, I mean, it's a similar thing. I just did a set at the Magic Castle that was Steve Eller's effect, essentially, with some touches of my own, and Pat Page. Now we're going to start listing the names of people. But then the next one is Max Maven and Bob White, plus Chuck Smith and Jerome Finley and Paul Vigil. And then the last phase is Gary Plants and John Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's everyone else's stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just the person who put it together. But Max Maven was in that show, and Max calls the cards, and Max invented pseudo-psychometry in its impromptu-ish guise with Desire, right? I mean, we obviously know it's older than Animan, but it's, if we're going to give credit where it's due, taken for random business cards and just handing them out and doing something wonderful with them is all Max, right? Or we've got to give it, that's really, what a change to the average thing, just like drop some stuff in an envelope. It's just so good.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, once you see it, you're like, of course. Who wouldn't have thought of that? I was like, well, you didn't.
Yeah.
He did. And he comes and sees the show and gives me great notes and so on and so forth. And if it were any other person, people would be like, oh, that's Max's routine and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, yeah, he's fine with it. I've talked to him about this and how I'm using, like, this is how it works, Like Bob, for instance, I'll mention this. Who cares?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's kind of, I'm not speaking ill, I'm just saying the facts.
Yeah.
Bob invented a version of the cap and pence and a one-handed method of getting into tilt that became attributed to Roger, because Roger did them, And I don't know to what degree Roger disabused people of it or said it. It happens all the time. Michael Amar makes Easy to Master card miracles, and people think he invented the ambitious card, and he never claims that he did, and it credits the source on the tape.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I love that trick. Is that the Visitor? That's Michael Amar's, right? I'm like, no, it's Larry Jennings, right? But yep, I know where you saw it.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. I love Michael Amar. But the same thing could happen to anyone, right? But he did manufacture Bob's version of cap and pence, and that did not go over well with Bob. And eventually they reconciled their relationship over this very major faux pas, if you can call it that, right?
Yeah.
And that taught me a really big lesson of all the magic lessons, is like, Bob taught me, you got to take people for who they are, because otherwise you're going to miss out on things. So you might have to hang with a couple of people whose scruples are not the same as yours in a variety of ways. and your common interests will keep you together. You learn from one another and so on, but you may not agree with everything that they do or say, you know, and you don't even have to respect everything that they do or say.
Yeah.
But that really, just that, watching his relationship with him, with Roger Klaus, taught me quite a bit. I just wouldn't be the person I am without Bob at all. Not magician, just dude.
Yeah,
You know? So I love him, yeah. And he's just a great magician. What else can you say?
I wish I knew him better. I mean, gosh, I've met him one time.
Yeah.
And he seems like, you know, because I grew up actually not even far from you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was 4 hours away from you.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any magicians. There was nobody that I knew. But like, because of that, and because I grew up in the internet age where I could, you know, buy books online and learn things from the twins and things like that, I wanted to go and meet other magicians, but I wanted to be as good as I could be, so that, you know, it wasn't like, oh, this kid's a piece of shit, he doesn't know anything. And, you know, but the whole time I was reading this stuff about Vernon and Jennings and, you know, even Scarney and it just, you know, the old guys, the old school, like, you know, kind of golden age of close-up guys. And I was thinking, like, the prototypical version of these people in my mind is Bob White.
Yeah.
He
would be like what you would have encountered if you were lucky enough to meet the people who lived in the golden age. If you went to the Kit Kat Club,
yeah,
he might have been at the other table working while Vernon was doing his tables.
Yeah.
You could just see it.
Yeah.
He's from another time, and it's he's from the time where it's timeless. You can take a photograph of Cary Grant in the 40s, and if he's in the right suit, you don't know when that picture was taken.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
It just has timeless style.
Yeah.
And Bob has timeless style. It's hard to pinpoint. Here's the thing. The irony is that because he has timeless style, he must come from another time. Because he's not hip, he's not into fashion, he doesn't care. So that in and of itself betrays his timelessness, which is hilarious, you know.
Paradoxical.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's the kind of guy. But the thing is like, I didn't know who he was. He's not.
He wanted it that way. Believe me. He would tell me things like, you know, Jared, obscurity and incompetence is the life best worth living. I think I got that from Mark Twain. You know, he would say that. He's in Corsicana. He lives out there because the bakery is good. I mean, I'm not kidding you. He doesn't like the traffic in Dallas, and he's like, man, that bakery, man, those fruitcakes. You know, I mean, whatever it is, he's just strange, and he doesn't want the attention.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want magicians knocking on his door. When we did those DVDs in like 2005, when we started those with the card palming and dude, you want to talk about a shoestring project? I mean, we went to Fry's and bought a digital camera that was pretty hot then. Man, if you saw it now, you'd be like, what a piece of garbage, you know? And we went to town, bought lights and everything, and set it up and just shot in his house with lamps, like, you know, table lamps, hidden everywhere to try to eliminate shadows. No soft boxes, nothing. And never in my wildest dreams would I think he would ever commit anything to video to show people, to teach them, because secrets matter to him. But not so much so that he's going to take them to his grave. And so now that these products have been out, and I kind of knew going into it, I'm like, how many are we going to print? 1,000?
Yeah.
Very few people are ever going to see this. Very few people who do see it will put in the time to learn it.
Yeah.
It took you 40 years to get that good at palming.
Yeah.
That's the commitment. Are you ready to put in 40 years into something? If you're not, then that will be part of your collection of discs, and you can show them off on your bookshelf, and people will compliment you, say, wow, you have a lot of DVDs, you know? I mean, that's all it's going to be. And so when that attitude hit him, he's like, yeah, I guess I can release this, and the people who do get it will get value out of it.
Yeah.
When that changed, which was a change. Like, he would not, like, every seminar, he didn't do lectures. If you went to a Bob White seminar, you were there for 8 hours. Sometimes it was 2 days long. Like, you would break and come back and do the next half. It was an intensive workshop only. Never a lecture, never, because he wasn't out to teach you a new trick. Every trick in Bob's notes is a classic trick.
Yeah.
Jazz aces. Some of them aren't even good tricks. They're just in there to illustrate, like, look, this is how you can apply the flash double and the false counts and the displays so that you have the uniformity of action. One thing for certain is I think Bob took this concept of uniformity of action that's in Erdnase and just look at the false counts. They speak for themselves. The short, the long, dealing into the spectator's hand or onto the table, or just counting from hand to hand. They look absolutely uniform. Even Vernon's short and long counts didn't match. He would do the perfect pitch count, and then he would do a buckle count or a push-off. Usually the buckle count. And all of Bob's counts are identical. He can count a packet of 10 cards as 3. He can count a packet of 5 cards as 10, and then 4, and then 7, and then 3, and then 12, right? And there's no difference. The true cannot be distinguished from the blind. And that's what it boils down to. And why can't it? Because the actions are uniform. They're the same. The blind and the true are identical. But for the most crucial part is that they're not. Right? God, he's good.
I heard a story.
He's so
think
good.
I talked to Gary was at Magi Fest.
Oh, awesome.
And we recorded a podcast with him.
Sweet.
And it was great. And I think it was Gary. It may have been somebody else, but I remember thinking about it with Gary. There was some convention or something, there was a kid there, and he was doing this like really flashy double lift, and Paul was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
"It's a double lift." "Well, do it again." "Why the hell would you ever do something like that?" I was saying, "This is all you gotta do. You show the goddamn card and you put it back on."
Well, that's the thing. Like, to him, a double lift should look like you're showing one card.
Yeah.
It's weird when the action to show 2 is different. Like, a magician who turns over a single card on the deck, turns over one card, and then when it comes time to do the double, and the actions aren't the same, to Bob, like, he can't even fathom how someone would ever do that. It's obvious to him that they should be identical.
Yeah.
You know, as I say, Bob doesn't articulate these things. They are innate in him. He thinks about them, don't get me wrong, and he can, if he has to write an essay about it, his essays in It's a Matter of Style should just be essential reading. You know, he says lines like, a bottom dealer can deal the bottom card from the deck as effortlessly as he can deal from the top. And the person who receives this card is no more expecting such a thing than he is being struck by lightning. Right? That's how he thinks about it. You know, so he's like, any action that would ruin that, you don't do ever, right? You know, why are you waking up the sheep? Don't wake them up. Or what? I don't, that phrase, it doesn't make any sense, but don't wake them up.
Yeah.
They're asleep. Yeah, that's what separates him from people. And what's weird, because everything that we're talking about is preached and pontificated. You know, people say that stuff. Be natural. Don't do this. It's all slogans, but I don't see it being applied. I see it being applied in a handful of people. And there's sometimes even they'll be like, no, I'm not supposed to, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Well, I guess the counter argument is, you know, you wouldn't show a card the same way in every situation.
That's true.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's say there are 5 situations of showing a card.
Yeah.
You have a card, you have the deck in your hand, you push off the card, and you push it off, you take it and look at it yourself. Situation number 1.
Okay.
It will always look the same way. Every time you have to look at the card yourself and not show it to someone else, and the deck is in your hand, you push it off, and it's always done the same way. If you had to, for some fucking weird reason, push off a double and look at it yourself and not show it to anyone, it would then mirror the true.
The true.
If you had to push off a card and show it to the audience and then put it right back on top of the deck, you would push it off, show it to the audience, put it on top of the deck. Then you would do it with 2 cards and make that look identical. Mm-hmm. It sounds so self-evident.
Yeah.
But it isn't.
Yeah.
It just isn't. If it were, people would be doing it. And they don't. And they hold up expert card technique and Erdnase as their Bibles, and they just ain't reading the Bible.
I think it's because they're coming up with a solution before they know what the problem is.
They're obsessed with method and practicing and fun. And that's okay too.
Absolutely.
There's room enough for everyone.
Yeah.
And in my show at the castle this week, I broke the rule, right? I came out, I showed the pack of cards. I'm trying to get across the feeling that the cards are not in any particular order. Mm-hmm. And I am never going to say, I shall now shuffle them. I'm not going to say they are in a random order. I'm not going to... So everything I do is predicated on this idea of, if they weren't in order, how would I behave? Yeah. I wouldn't give a shit. That's how I'd behave. So I take them out of the box, I hand them to someone. Yeah. I say, spread through those. Are they all different?
Yeah.
Right? I take them back. And man, a couple of times people drop the deck. And there is no backup deck. You know, as a professional, you say, oh, you have a backup deck and you can do a switch. And you know what? If I handed it to them and they dropped it, that trick's over. You did not manage your audience well. You are punished now, magician. You must now roll with that punch, right?
The first time I saw you at the castle this week.
It happens.
Spread through the deck, and the guy just started shuffling them.
There you go. And you can't say, did I tell you to shuffle? You just got to roll right along like it doesn't matter, right?
Yep.
That's hard to do sometimes, especially, I think that was the first show. You can get that deer caught in headlights look about you. But I'm trying to get across this idea of it. And so I say, the only difference between these and the ones that come straight from the CVS or the factory, whatever it is I'm saying, is that I've been shuffling these backstage and bending them and breaking them in, bending them to my will, you might say. And now I do just a spring flourish, as I say, bending them to my will. Because there is no apparent sleight of hand throughout the rest of the show. Mm-hmm. There is no magic for the first 3 minutes or so.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's not even procedure.
Mm-hmm.
That's dangerous. So I give him a little something which we often forget isn't widely seen. And I found a nice little way to flourish in a magic act that I would never do if I were about to employ, even though I am employing sleight of hand, but doing effects that seem sleight of handy.
Yeah.
Right? If I were doing ace assemblies and travelers and stuff, I might not even give the deck a really elegant ribbon spread. I might not even go there, right? But in this act, it didn't feel so wrong. And I could be wrong. I could be a hypocrite. I could be completely wrong. But that's an effective... I used it for something, you know? And that maybe that's how I'm getting around that moment of anti-Erdnasian action, you know? One single display of dexterity and your usefulness is past in the present company, and your reputation is likely to precede you in many another. Excessive vanity proves the undoing of many experts. The temptation to show off is great, but the professional should never slough over. Oh, geez. And if you think that's in the gambling section, you just turn to the ledger domain section and read what he says about showing off. Yeah. He is not a fan. But he's dead. And we're true. Not.
Yep.
You know? And I have to say, emerging out of magic is this little subgenre that's like this weird hybrid of magic and juggling. And Dan and Dave themselves are largely responsible for its ubiquity. Mm-hmm. And it is It's just visually it's stunningly beautiful, and that just can't be wrong.
Yeah.
Mixing them will take using that, if you're gonna use them together. Like Henry Christ, here's a guy thinking, he does his whole show, and at the end he walks out, takes his bow, and is doing multiple cuts in each hand. And people are like, oh shit, now I get it. He could have done anything with those cards. And I think most magicians would be better off not getting their audiences to ever think such a thing.
Yeah.
The thing is we kind of do live in a modern world. And people I've seen magicians, they can do anything with cards. And now you're magicians, you, individual, you're magicians, and they can, and so on. So a real artist might find a way to find a good hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
I still am not convinced it's for me, but I also have to admit that I secretly am fucking around with the worm every once in a while. You know what I mean? Because it's fun. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's weird.
I did, and to me, the argument of flourishing and doing magic in, let's say, the same set is literally no different for me as someone doing a gambling routine and magic in the same set.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of parallel there, and I also am not. I'm with Erdnase. I do not like the hypocritical cant of so-called reformed gamblers. The best gambling routine that I've ever seen, and it was never performed. It was just kind of in the context of a similar discussion as to what we're having. The person, who shall remain nameless now because I don't know if I can betray their confidences, they didn't expose any of the moves. They didn't name any of the moves they were doing. They were showing that you can be cheated.
Yeah.
But they didn't say, and here's what I'm doing here, and turn a card face up and second deal it. That never happened. I was like, aha, that's interesting. But you're right, in some magic tricks, like cards up the sleeve, are just displays of skill. What else could they be?
Yeah.
And that's not Erdnasian, and he's got a full deck version of cards up the sleeve in his book. So you get, you're grasping at the teeniest, tiniest threads in these arguments here, and not all they're not steadfast rules.
Yeah.
Someone, here's, if anyone's looking for a good way of introducing flourishes, it's like, I saw Steve Forty on some clip that he did for the World Poker Tour, who knows, but it's called The Hand is Quicker Than the Eye. It's like a bonus from a DVD, and I think it's floating around on the internets. And he opens with a line to the effect of, a lot of people, when they think of cards, they think of playing cards, they think of fancy moves and sleight of hand. And he does a spring and does some other flourish. That's his opening thing to get into the, I'm going to show you how you can protect yourself, right? And I said, what a good intro that would be for a magician to say, a lot of people, and you could be doing the worm or the Leno or whatever the cut you're doing, and you say, a lot of people, when they think of magic, they think of fancy moves and sleight of hand. But I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, I will not touch these cards. And now you could go into some crazy mental routine or something, and people are like, that wasn't, he could do sleight of hand, I saw him.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
That's what I kind of
that could be interesting
when I was performing.
And you'd have to, at least you're thinking, though. At least you're thinking, how can I know that there's a problem here, that they're butting
is a
heads.
duality of,
And this, every time, like in expert card technique, Hugert and Browie themselves, they say, don't riffle the ends of, don't even riffle the ends of the cards, right? Oh, how many times have you been walking through a convention in here, and people are just like
endlessly fidgeting with the deck,
that's a good spot to be in, because now I don't know how many people saw Smokin' Aces, but I do know plenty of those people went home and looked up whatever that was called, tried to find out, what did that guy do in Smokin' Aces, right? And that spawned a bunch of people in the same way that any movie, the Maverick one, I wanted to learn how to deal off the bottom because of that movie, Maverick. That's what, 1995?
Yeah.
Right? Smoking Aces is what, 2006 or 7?
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
Right?
Around
That definitely got some new fans. So now we live in a world where flourishing is all over the planet. I know lay people who will come up and say, "Can you do that? I saw this guy and he was doing." They're describing
Yeah.
flourishing, so it's everywhere. It's not going anywhere. The argument remains the same as it ever was, but now it's in the general zeitgeist. Though people are aware of it.
Yeah.
In the same way, like when you go, like if you get booked for a gig and they're like, "Oh, we would like you to go from table to table," that's because one of those jackasses went to an event, saw a magician going from group to group to group, who likely was not particularly good, right? And thought we should have that at our party.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do everything in my power to dissuade people from doing interruption magic.
Yeah.
Mariachi magic, rose cellar magic, right? I'm trying to, but that's the only thing they've ever seen. So we have to be careful also about what we spread out into the general cultural zeitgeist, because they will begin to think, for instance, that all magic, the only way to do it is to walk from group to group and be a jerk. And they might think, we can't hire a magician. All they do is stand up there and cut the deck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we got to be careful there. Now, that's an extreme example.
Of course, but it's
I
all
could
about-
also see someone hiring a whole row of flourishers, right? Who, as like a 5-minute act, do this barrage if they were just a single person who comes on and does something to music, perhaps. Then it would be like dance, and now we're getting into, it isn't magic, but it feels magical.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of magic could stand to have the same sentence uttered about it.
Yeah.
It's obviously not magic, but doesn't it feel magical? So
Yes.
that's more important to me than these little nitpicky things these days.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's about it's about creating a cohesive message in that whatever the purpose is, whatever you think the purpose ought to be, that's what it should be.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you so much for being here and doing it. This was great. I had a great time.
I had a great time too. What a good, the coffee was good. Chit chat was good.
Chit chat was good.
Mm-hmm.
Next time you're out here, we'll do another one.
That sounds great.
Okay.
All
Cool.
right.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening in podcast land. Be well.